Madam President, this afternoon I joined with Senator Warner and Senator Klobuchar and Senator Casey to point out just how much harm was caused to this country because we are governing from one manufactured crisis to another. The cost of the government shutdown, the cost of coming so close to defaulting on our obligations, the fact that we are governing through automatic across-the-board cuts known as sequestration, all have hurt our economy. It's been particularly difficult for the people in the state I represent of Maryland because in our region, we have so many federal workers, so many federal facilities. We saw during the shutdown, 10% of our workforce works for the federal government. So we saw so many small businesses in our community that depend upon the federal workforce that literally had nobody in their restaurants and their shops. Consumer confidence was at an all-time low. And there have been national estimates as to the amount of harm caused by these government shutdowns. Standard & Poor's said $24 billion was taken out of our economy as a result of the government shutdown. Add that to the extra cost because we came so close to defaulting on our debt. Add that to the fact that since 2011 we've been living under sequestration. The estimates is that we have lost about 900,000 jobs from this crisis management, self-inflicted crisis, I might add, Madam President. Now, the impact of that, I could give you many, many, many examples, but let me just give you one. I've had a chance, I'm very proud that the National Institutes of Health are homed in the state of Maryland. Of course, their impact is all over this country, including in the state of Massachusetts, has a major impact on the work done at NIH. And as a result of sequestration, then as a result of the government shutdown, hundreds of grants could not be awarded. I think it was 700 by sequestration alone. Now, what does that mean? That means young researchers don't get a grant. They may stay with research. They may go to a different field. They may go to a different country. It means that maybe the cure for Alzheimer's will be put back a little bit, or the influenza vaccine will be put back a little bit. And literally, lives are at risk, but also our economy is at risk because the research done there supports so many private sector jobs. I could give you the same example at FDA or at NIST or Beltsville Agricultural Research Center or Fort Meade. We go many, many examples of how our country has been harmed. You cannot govern from one manufactured crisis to another. So my message is that I hope we'll get a budget agreement. I know the budget conferees met this week. That will give some predictability to our economy, eliminate sequestration, and give a pro-growth budget that we invest in education and research and modern roads and bridges and transit systems. That's what we need for our country. So I want to share with my colleagues what I've been doing in my own state of Maryland, because I am very optimistic about America's ability to globally compete if we stop these self-inflicted crises. So I've had this Made in Maryland tour that I have been doing throughout the state of Maryland, where I've visited many, many businesses in my state. I must tell you, I want to give credit to my colleague in the House, Congressman Hoyer, who's saying make it in America has really caught on, that we can make it in America. So I took my friend Congressman Hoyer's suggestion and I went around Maryland to meet with different companies in our state. And I must tell you, their Maryland businesses are the best in the world. The best in the world. I know I'm a little biased about Maryland, but they're best in the world on innovation and creativity. So let me just give you a few examples that may not be self-evident, like the Paul Reed Smith Guitar Factory. Now, Madam President, that guitar factory is located on the eastern shore of Maryland in a very little community, a small community called Stevensonville. Over 200 people work there, and they produce the best guitars in the world. They're sold all over the world. Santana's guitar was produced there. It's now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's such an incredible instrument, not only in beauty, but in sound. And it's run right here in Maryland in the USA. 200 jobs. That's what we've done, over 200 jobs. Let me give you another example of a company I visited during my Made in Maryland tour, the Volvo Mack truck plant located in Hagerstown, Maryland, one of the largest employers in Western Maryland. huge number of jobs, good-paying jobs that are created at Volvo. They make the most efficient truck engine in the world, produced right in Maryland, in the United States of America. The most innovative, creative way to deal with the problem of efficiency on trucks. I visited the Ernest Mayer, which makes these brick pavers and concrete. It's very close to where we are here near the nation's capital. I mention that because we can do manufacturing in America and we can compete in manufacturing, but they're developing the technology for pervious concrete. Why is that important? It's critically important to our environment. I take great pride in the Chesapeake Bay and the work we're doing to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. One of the major sources for pollution in the Chesapeake Bay comes every time we have a storm, and all the runoff goes into the tributaries and lead into the Chesapeake Bay, causing a lot of pollutants to come into the bay, creating dead zones. Well, if we have pervious concrete, allowing the water to seep rather than to flow, it cuts down dramatically the amount of pollution. Well, the Ernest Mayer Company is doing something about that and doing something about cleaning up our environment as well as selling a product that is well received around the country. We have Marlin Steel located in Baltimore. I mentioned that it's a small specialty steel company. They're growing, their jobs are growing. Their product is sold all over the world. 100% of the ingredients come from the United States, and it is exported around the world because it is a quality product. That's steel. Steel manufactured in Maryland, United States of America, exported to other countries. Atlas Container, it's another Maryland manufacturer with a national market. Visited them. They're doing great. Their sales are up. Their employment is up. Let me mention a couple areas which I think is particularly important to the presiding officer in Massachusetts, and that's the craft beer industry. I've been up to Massachusetts, and I've enjoyed some of your craft beers. Over 100,000 jobs in the craft beer industry in this country, and it's growing. You've heard about times that are tough, not in the craft beer industry. It's growing. I visited Flying Dog in Frederick and Heavy Seas in Baltimore. They're coming out with new and seasonal beers, which is keeping a market growing using creativity besides having a very fine product. And it's not just in the craft beer industry, it's also in the wine industry. We have about 64 wineries in our state. I visited one that's in Montgomery County, Maryland. I don't know, most people know that Montgomery County, Maryland produces one of the best wines in this country and can compete internationally. We're very proud of what's done at Sugarloaf Mountain Winery in Montgomery County, Maryland. I could go on. Let me talk about BrainScope in Bethesda, because I want to talk about some of the high-tech jobs that are done here, and I'm proud of what's done in Maryland. BrainScope has developed a way in which they can have a portable device available in the battlefield that can tell the severity of a head wound as to whether the warrior needs immediate attention in order to save his life because of a brain injury, or whether it can be taking a little more time before that treatment. So they have developed a portable device, very inexpensive, I might say, in its operations, that is attached, gives you the type of test necessary to determine your brain waves and can determine the severity of your head injury. The military is very appreciative of this discovery. I must tell you, I think the total cost was about $10 million to develop. And think about the lives it will save. And think about the application of this technology to our community life. And I think all of us are always nervous when we see our children or grandchildren on the playing field of sporting events, knowing how common now head injuries are. Well, this technology can be used on the playing field to determine the severity, whether the person who has suffered a head injury needs to seek immediate medical attention because it's life-threatening, they say a structural problem, or whether they just have to sit out for a while or with the severity of the injury. Well, that's what's being done in my state of Maryland. That's the type of innovation and creativity that's taking place in Maryland. And I can name dozens of other small innovative companies that are working in the biosciences and the life sciences and the cybersecurity areas that are creating ways. At BrainScope, they started with 2 employees. They now have over 20. Common story. These are good-paying jobs created here in Maryland in the United States of America. Lyons Brothers, in Owings Mills. If you ever seen a uniform with emblems on it, it was most likely done in Lyons Brothers in my state. They have figured out the way in which they can produce this product, which is used not only for sports gear, it's used by the United States government for its uniforms, it's used by the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. They do all that. And it's right here in Maryland, in the United States of America. Now, what is common in each of these companies? They're innovators. They find a creative way to create and expand markets. They're creating more jobs, and they're creating good paying jobs. And I tell you, Madam President, it's particularly appropriate with the president who represents the state of Massachusetts, which is one of the great states for innovation and creativity. And we could just name just about every state in this country where we have seen creativity. We can duplicate this. We have duplicated this throughout our country. But the message is clear. Our country can take off, but we have to give predictability to our businesses. We got to make decisions. That's why the work being done in the conference committee on the budget is so important. We can't go through another manufactured crisis, another shutdown, another threatened default on our debt, the continuation of sequestration. That needs to end. We need to have a budget that allows for the type of government partnership that allows for that type of economic growth, the basic research, the educated workforce, the modern roads and infrastructure and energy systems. That's what we need to have so that the companies I mentioned can continue to lead the world in innovation, creativity, creating the jobs we need, the good-paying jobs in America. If we act, I am confident that America will compete and win global competition. Made in Maryland, it's been a huge success that has been duplicated all over our country. Let us act, get our work done, so we truly can make it in America.